I'm excited to dive into another round of our pre-symposium panel. So our pre-symposium panel is our run-up to our executive symposium on July 27, 2023 in Austin, Texas. If you can make it, we'd love to have you there. I will post the link in the comments on how to RSVP. But we're here to talk about how to build a culture of embracing mistakes. I'm Garrett Mintz. I'm the founder of Ambition in Motion. Our vision is a world where the vast majority of people are excited to go to work. When they're there, their expectations meet reality. When they come home, they feel fulfilled. And we believe it starts with leaders because leaders create the experiences that employees have while at work. So we've got three esteemed great leaders here with us today to talk about how to build a culture of embracing mistakes. We've got Arik Yelovitch, we've got Don Hartman, we've got Phillips. Arik, Don, Damar, do you mind just introducing yourselves?
Sure.
Arik, go first.
Arik Yelovitch, CTO of Dallas Insurance for the last year. Came to the States 7 years ago to help to start a startup named Hippo Insurance in the InsurTech back in the old days of InsurTech 1.0, and being a director of engineering there, and left and joined Credit Karma in the fintech industry, and then became a consultant in the InsurTech again because it's so interesting and everybody dreams to be in the insurance industry. So I kind of made a 180 and went back there. And in the last year, developed the technology organization of Dallas to get better service to California and other states in the wildfire area. Very enthusiastic on technology and great believer in human relationship and motivation.
Perfect. Damar, how about you?
Hi, I'm Don Phillips, the Vice President of People Operations at Hyliion. I've been in Texas for the last 5 years. Prior experience includes retail environment at Walmart, which is a huge mammoth of a company to learn from. That's where I think I cut my corporate teeth. And then private industry, public industry, and other fascinating opportunities. And I'm excited to join, my esteemed colleagues and you guys to talk about this subject and have more to share in a little bit, but excited to be a part of this symposium.
Absolutely. And Don, how about you?
Yeah, hi there, Don Hartman. I'm with a company called Aspire Systems. We're a 5,000 person global delivery, Indian-centric offshore firm. And my background includes IBM, Oracle, Ernst & Young, and then lately it's just fun to be part of a SEAL Team 6 kind of a company that's big enough to get big things done, but small enough to be quick and agile and responsive. And boy, this is a fun time to do any kind of technology disruption.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah, no, great points. Well, Damar, Don, Arik, let's kick it off. Topic is how to build a culture of embracing mistakes. I'd love to kick off with a mistake that you've made. So think about a time that when you were trying to implement a change initiative within your organization, or maybe you fell flat and things didn't work out the way you thought it would. What was the situation? What happened? What'd you learn from it? Who wants to go first?
I'll jump in.
Yeah, jump in, Damar.
And so I think I'm still going through the change management process where we are working on a reward system for our employees called WorkHuman. The platform itself is fantastic, really simplifies things, puts at your fingertip recognition opportunities and recognition ideas. My director of total rewards, Leslie Bingham, did a fantastic job of coordinating and getting everything done. And when we were going to the meeting for our executives to kind of sell them on this idea, our expectation was that it was already a signed, done deal, right? And it was more of a recap meeting as opposed to a pitch the idea to get it finalized type of a meeting. I had signed all the documentation to get it done. We had moved super fast to get it executed by January 1 of this year. That's how recent the project is. And went into the executive team meeting completely caught off guard by the questions that were being asked. And I think, one of the things that I would like to share, or at least in my own personal experience, is that you're so tied to it, you're so caught up in the moment that it feels like a personal attack, even a professional attack, when someone is questioning, well, why are you doing this? Like, what's really the true value? And so I think in that meeting, I came across overly defensive. I was trying to support Leslie and the company and move us to this platform system because the need exists and it's there, but probably needed to step back from that and assess, ask more questions, if you will, from the executive leadership team, just so I had a full understanding. Because the last thing you want to do is tick off the CEO and the CFO and your COO and all the big C's, right, that are in the room. And so taking a step back, I recovered from that. We implemented it. I had the support of my COO throughout the whole process, but slowing down enough to make sure I'm checking the boxes for the other leaders and providing them an opportunity to be able to ask the questions that they need to be comfortable with the change, because it was a big culture change for us to shift to this platform. I probably should have slowed down a little bit. And so my advice to anyone who has a big idea to pitch is to make sure you do the rest of your homework, not just how the platform is going to work, not just communication to the employee base, but really your audience for selling the idea to get it implemented, and make sure that you have your champions lined out before the final meeting is there. So, that way you're more prepared for the questions that could potentially come, because when you have C-suite individuals, they're going to be asking the questions that no one has asked in the room yet, because that's how they're wired.
That's a great story, Damar. I appreciate you sharing that. That's awesome. And I totally see your side of the situation as well. Like you thought in that scenario, you were empowered to make this decision, that you had autonomy to make this call. And you still did, but it needed to get greater buy-in from the rest of the executive team. And yeah, that's a great lesson learned that you shared. I appreciate that. Great story, Damar. Thanks for sharing that. Don, Arik, how about you guys? What's a mistake that you guys have made in terms of a mistake in terms of enacting any form of change initiative within the organization?
Well, I can go next. So we back in my Hippo days, we were a young startup. Everybody wanted to prove themselves, of course, and we had a few assigned tasks to implement a few different features for agents and consumers. It's a very big initiative. It also was important for the next round. And of course, when someone comes to tech and asks for a lot of things and put a lot of emphasis on how critical it is, tech knows, and then we go and do our homework. Opposite to what we need to do. We need first to do our homework and then start nodding or saying no. And as a young director, when the CEO comes to you and say, I need this and this and this done because it's critical, then go and then start planning. And I already saw from the planning phase with the engineers we have and everything, unless I work 24/7, and even then we might not make it. But of course, I didn't want to disappoint because I was a young director and I didn't want to speak to the CEO and come and say, listen, Asaf, it's not going to work. We need another 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I didn't have the courage to do so. So all of us worked hard, and I overcompensated, and it wasn't the best quality features because there never are. So kind of we introduced a lot of bugs, unfinished features, but still everybody worked there hard and 24/7. And at the end, everybody it's like after running sprint for 20 minutes, everybody laid on their back and couldn't breathe anymore. And that actually reduced our velocity for the next month. People were just exhausted. And I think the main mistake was, and kind of the opposite from Damar, a mirror image, I would say, from Damar is when C-level comes and make requirements, don't be afraid of letting them know that, thank you, I heard the requirement. I'm going to do my homework and see how it works and come back and push back, or lay out the land and say, you want this at this time? Here you go. This is the price. This is what we can deliver. This is what we can deliver, et cetera, because C-level always have, and I'm trying to live by the rule and not to expect that, but C-level always expect magic, especially the technology where CEOs are not tech oriented and most of them are not. Magic happens in the tech world. Like you can do everything. You just code, right? It's like my father once said, well, what did you develop? Just a screen. Yeah, but there's a lot of things going into this one page. And so that's my big mistake of not pushing back and creating an organization on the tech of pushing back against product and C-level, and kind of nod and say, yes, sir, we're going to do it, whatever the price is.
Man, I love that story, Arik. I'm chuckling because I feel so much relatability to that. As a non-technical founder, I'm like, what would be great, guys, is if we just did this one thing. And they're like, you build a level of comfort of having that pushback where it's like, hey, we can definitely do this thing, but that's going to push back this, this, and this. Happy to devote the resources to it, but if you're okay with pushing back these other timelines, and if we don't have that open dialogue, that upfront dialogue with our leaders and our team about what expectations are realistic, it can lead to burnout, frustration, and just ultimately people just checking out. And so great story, Arik. I chuckle because of the amount of relatability to that is palpable.
Very relatable.
And then Don, how about you? What's a mistake that you've made in terms of implementing a change initiative?
Yeah, so similar story to what Arik talked about. I was with Oracle, and it was a big change in an organization regarding how they did data warehouse, BI, and real-time business intelligence. And it was a big, big change for the organization. So as I went through all the stakeholders, they had one legacy person that just absolutely did not want to change. He would smile and nod, and he would salute the flag, but he was quietly sabotaging the whole project from behind the scenes. So I thought I had enough support with all the stakeholders that we could just go in spite of him. But he was vehement enough, and he knew the organization well enough that he managed to sabotage an entire change effort. And so the lesson there was, boy, make sure you identify all the stakeholders and how much influence they have and what it is they really want out of change. Right. And that's one thing that Nilu Sethi did so well at Ready Ice. She took a job, and her job was to fix ERP. And she said, after a month, she went back to the board and said, sorry, this isn't going to work. We don't need to put Band-Aids on this. We need to replace the heart, soul, liver, lungs, and all the major joints. And if you don't believe that, well, we're going to hit a wall in about 12 to 18 months, and the company is going to die. And if that's not what you want to do, I'm not your person to lead it. So let me know what you want to do. And in her mind, so she did what I didn't do. She understood all the stakeholders, and early success brought great, and early vision brought great followership. She had yellow t-shirts made up for everybody on the transformation team. And so pretty soon everybody in the company said, oh, can I have a yellow t-shirt? Can I join the team? And she had all the support that she wanted because she had vision. She understood what all the stakeholders wanted, and she had that famous yellow t-shirt.
And she put her butt on the line for the change initiative. And that is huge, because so often I think we have, I'm not sure a scarcity mindset, but we're in our job. It's cozy. We don't want to lose our job. The salary is nice. Everything's good. We got a good title. And so when we come in and trying to initiate a change initiative and we know this needs to happen, and there are some people that are like, yeah, totally. I'm envisioning this one person who's just like, yeah, I'm totally on board. I'm all about it, 100%. Everything you want to do, yeah, for sure. And as he's shaking his head, no, like it's frustrating. But what you're kind of describing, Don, it sounds like you almost need to smoke it out, where it's like, hey, if you're not on board with this, we need to smoke this out. Either you need to get on this boat, or I might not be the right fit at this organization, and be willing to put yourself on the chopping block. It sounds like that was what was really effective.
Yeah.
One of the key themes that I keep hearing from each of your stories, by the way, I really appreciate you sharing these stories of your mistakes. I think they were really powerful, is the ability to speak up. And that's why this topic exists, of how to build a culture of embracing mistakes, which is part of it, is how do we empower people to speak up about these things? These were lessons that you have learned, but are there ways that we could go about teaching these lessons so that we can avoid the mistake from happening, so then people aren't like, falling flat on their face, and maybe can get started with the upfront communication ahead of time? Have you all found anything effective for stimulating that type of dialogue?
I think it really starts with the type of culture that your company has, right? And so if you have a history of cutting people off at the knees, of people speaking up and nothing's going on with it, here's some problems and there's no solutions, then the likelihood of employees to try to address it and say, hey, I have courage enough to say this isn't going to work, that changes, right? If your culture is not embracive or open and inclusive, to be able to hear feedback from others. I think, I'm in a very fortunate situation where I'm at now, but prior to that, I wasn't. So, I was the vice president of global people services. We switched it to organizational development, same job, different title. But we had a CEO who was not very open to hearing no and open to hearing other people's ideas. And, literally turned over the whole leadership team during my tenure there. And then I was the one to go last because I stood up and everyone else didn't. And it was fear. And I think if you have a culture where literally the worst thing that an employer can do to someone is terminate your employment. Once you as an employee understand that, then what is there to fear, right? You found a job when you were looking for that job, so the jobs are aplenty. Your career can take off in a different direction and provide you with different opportunity. But the environment that was there was a toxic environment. And we throw that term around a lot, I think, toxicity. But if you go to the CEO and they cuss you out, that's not a healthy environment, right? Or if someone says no to a project request, then that person becomes terminated or isolated before they get terminated so that you can find something on them. They're insubordinate. People throw that term a lot. That's a problem and it's not healthy. And I think what I've seen in the last few years, especially since the COVID era, is that people are taking their mental health and what we call our peace more seriously. Life is difficult as it is with all these outside variables. I don't want to go to work and have to fight just to get an initiative through or just to get through the day. And people are making different choices, right? And so I think it really starts at the culture of the company and the environment. And if that's not a top down, whether it's directly from the CEO or the C-suite down, so the employees feel like they have a voice at the table, and especially if they don't have a strong human resources, people operations function to be able to be their voice, then I think you're going to have more problems.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really good point. Don, Arik, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I also think it depends on the size of the organization, right? And I'm in the last few years, I kind of shift between big organization like Create Karma, a startup that grew, and now a startup that has 12 employees. So it's very easy to have a good culture, of course, when you're small, because this is like you handpick your employees, you're a small organization. I don't want to use the term family because I think it's misused in a work. It's work, not family, but it's family-like feeling in a sense, very, very limited sense, very narrow sense. My personal encouragement for employees is give me feedback. I don't mind getting feedback. I'm making more mistakes than I'm getting things right. That's a fact. Now let's work with that. So I believe very much in personal example, right? I'm making mistakes. I own the mistakes. I broke production twice already in the last 3 months. Okay, I broke production. I fixed it. I'm not immune to it. So I learned from it and created better procedures because we're rushing forward. And in a startup, when you're small, these communication lines are open. When you're getting bigger and bigger, above 20, 30, 40 employees, this is where you have to this is where the C-suite comes in and really need to emphasize the openness, right? How we communicate the message, how open we are to mistakes and feedbacks, and how we put the guardrails, right? I think the only mistake that I'm always emphasize that I'm not willing to forgive, and I would say not that I'm not willing to forgive, but I see it as almost no way to turn back, is if someone betrays your trust, right? I don't mind people making mistakes. Mistakes are part of our industry, part of the nature of the beast. But if someone breaks a trust and says I'm doing something and he didn't or she didn't, and not because it's mishap, but because they actually didn't do that on purpose and things like that, this is where also you need to be very, very, very strict. And I think this is kind of the balance of tolerating mistakes, right? And encouraging mistakes, break fast, fix fast, right? Versus just not able to trust the person to work. And this is a major issue, right? If you can't trust your employees, if you can't trust your engineers, then what are we doing here? if I have to double check everything. Trust but verify, but I can't verify everything on one person. And again, that's the difference. Now I can, right? I have 4 engineers. When I'll have 20, there's no way I can scale unless my wife won't see me anyway. And I'm working from home and still my wife doesn't see me that much. So I don't want to work 24/7 again.
That's a really interesting point, Eric, about communicating throughout the organization and also.
But can I add something?
Yeah,
Right.
jump into more. Yeah, I love it.
So I don't know if others have worked at Walmart, but there's something called 2 million associates, right? In 8,000 plus stores. And we're centralized human resources function. And the CEO isn't communicating trust, and communicating execution all the way, all the time, right? Your leadership group, and it goes director level, senior director level, but it also goes down to the frontline supervisor level, line level. That's where the biggest area of influence exists, is there, and so I haven't been at Walmart for a while, but I know Doug McMillan, the current CEO, right? Doug is great. He has Bill Clinton-esque qualities. He's very likable, but he can't see 2 million associates, right? And so that level of execution and communication and openness has to exist at the supervisor level, because that's where the greatest influence, at least from my perspective, from a people's perspective, exists. And so the things are about executing communication and building trust, and those things happen there. I don't need a CEO to do that for me. They need to provide the big aspirational, motivational sales gimmick, whatever that is, that vision, and shake hands, kiss babies, all that great stuff. But I need the line person to have that credibility with that employee, because if something goes wrong overnight, that supervisor is going to be the first to know. Even in my position, right? We have 270 something employees. So we're growing. I've added several since I've started over a year ago. But the first interaction isn't with me at the VP level. It's with the line supervisor or the team lead. And so I think building leaders and making sure that we have openness and transparency and building all that has to start at that team lead level, going into the supervisor level, going into the manager level, up the chain of command, not top down, but bottom up.
I agree with you, but what I'm trying to emphasize, when you're small, this is where you build the core, right? This is where you handpick the core to establish that growth around it. And if the core is not good, if the message in the beginning wasn't good, there's no way the message will be better when the team grows. I agree with you. A middle management at some point in the organization is the most important. They're out there in the trenches, right? With engineers, with whatever role you have. And the CEO and CTO and even VPs, they don't see day-to-day operation. They're more on the strategic level. So there's no way you're going to handle, if a bug happens and production is down, most of the time VP won't interfere, even it's a director and below level, because they're going to fix it. You're not going to fix it. You're not going to code it.
And I was just trying not to give those big companies a pass. I think execution across all
it's
things,
execution across. I'm saying C-level is very important in the beginning when you build this infrastructure, when you build the core of the company, the culture of the company. And I've been to companies that I've seen the core of the company shifted completely after 50 because someone came in and started changing the culture, and it started distrust and things like that. And that's killer. Walmart actually did I read a lot about Walmart. Walmart actually did an amazing job of keeping this culture of trust and getting people that you trust and people that know to execute. And the CEO doesn't need, he's going to kiss babies, right? Because he trusts this middle management.
Right. I agree. Perfect.
This is interesting. And Don, I want you to jump in here, but this topic, this concept that I keep hearing from both of you guys is how do you get this, sure, how do you set the vision from the executive C-suite team at the outset, but then how do you get middle management to buy in from layers as you grow and get bigger and as the organization is bigger? That's a thing that's very different. Like I'm thinking, to let's say a Walmart example, store manager. Say it's an announcement from the executive team that the store manager should be sharing with all employees, all team members. There's a very big difference between the store manager saying, hey, everybody, I was told that I got to read this thing to y'all. So listen, and then go back to work. There's a very big difference between that and an energetic, like, hey, everybody, here's a new exciting announcement from HQ. We're going to be doing this initiative. We're focusing on this. Like, it's a very big difference between that, because if we are not having, whether it be the energy, the chutzpah, what, you know, the excitement around the message being delivered,
Yep.
It's not going to garner the type of result. Like, did it happen? Yes or no? We're only looking at it as a box, like, check, we did it. Okay. It's the how is where the culture, I think, is at. Don, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'll give an example of the favorite boss I ever had, a guy named Don Jones at Ernst & Young. The foundation of a culture of mistakes is trust. And he showed trust, or he built trust by loyalty. And in most companies, in most of our careers, we've had a couple of bosses that are firmly behind us, right? They would back us up when something went wrong. And there's a couple of bosses that'll even hang around when the heat gets hot. But it's very, very rare for a boss to say what Don Jones did 3 times in his organization. He walked into his boss's office, put his badge on his boss's desk and said, "You treat my guys the way you promised, or I quit." So he would, and in a very large organization, he only had to do that 3 times before the word got around, man, the boss is loyal. He hangs behind us. Even when one of us has done something wrong, he always backs us up. And surprise, surprise, he's pretty much everybody he's ever worked with would follow him off a cliff. That's what a real leader does to embrace a culture of mistakes, is inspire loyalty.
Yeah, and it comes back to trust. I think, again, the core is exactly what you said on trust. If you trust your employees, you'll back them to hell and back.
Yeah.
And if there's something broke the trust, this is where it's becoming difficult.
Right.
Where is the dichotomy, though, between trust and whether we call it enthusiasm, body language? I think body language plays a big part in that, because we're talking about disseminating a message throughout the entire organization. I may trust you, but whether it be my personality, my natural demeanor, I might just have really crappy body language. And so even though I trust my executive team, I trust my leadership team, I am a broken spoke in the chain. I have disseminated the message, yes, but my body language is not communicating that I am actively engaged in that message. Even if I actually am actively engaged in the message, how do you go about, I guess, how do you go about not only stimulating trust, but also the body language piece of that too, like the dissemination of the message?
Well, let me talk about.
Wait, jump in.
Yeah, you got a body language coach or communications coach.
Okay.
And we've all met people that were lousy communicators. Okay, then if you're really that bad at communicating, you have someone else deliver the message in the organization. But the big piece about confirming trust and building trust is what you reward, recognize, and celebrate as an organization.
I like that.
Yeah, because if somebody works their tail off and never gets a pat on the head, okay, and we all need rewards in different languages, right? The 5 languages of love, right? Everything means different things to different people, but to never get recognized. What was the stat I just read a week or 2 ago, that 2/3 or 80% of people in organizations have not had their boss say one positive piece of feedback in 90 days? Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I like that. And I think, typically it's not the what you say, it's the how you say it, right? Which is what you're referring to, because you get more out of nonverbal cues than what is actually spoken. That's a well-known stat. But it's true. And, I think as I'm coaching employees, whether they're my own direct reports or others, on the interpretation that someone has had. This is a very common HR communication thing, right? Of being able to help leaders become better leaders and focus on the delivery of the message. And it's not that you can't be direct or, should be passive or indirect, but how you deliver the message is important. We have an amazing CEO founder, Thomas Healy at Halion. I could send out a communication, but a lot of times it's like, no, the evaluation of who should send the message and deliver the message, even if it's a change that impacts the whole company, it's like, no, this should come from Thomas, because the respect that is given, the delivery, the intent, and knowing that the support that he's going to garner with delivering that message weighs more than anything that I could send or deliver, right? And the affinity for someone who has built a business, just like the affinity that Garrett, that your employees have for you as the founder of your organization, right? There's just something about the founder that says something, just like Mr. Sam. Mr. Sam was not the smartest businessman in the world. He was a student first. And the most brilliant thing that he did in his career isn't build the Walmart giant. It was, anytime I visit a store, I'm going to lower myself down so that the person that's speaking to me knows. He had a yellow legal pad that he would go visit the stores. He had a puddle jumper airplane that he would fly himself to land in the field, jump a fence, walk into the competitor store first, the Ben Franklin's, the different types of the Kmart's, the Sears at that time that were much bigger than Walmart was. Learn from them, and then go and ask the associate in the Walmart stores, how can we make your life better? It was humbleness. It was listening, and it was establishing trust. That when he died, I mean, the whole company had a black eye for a period of time, right? I mean, that's the level of building up the loyalty factor, of building up the trust factor, of being able to have people run through brick walls, the putting my badge on a desk to say, you treat my people right, or you find another person for this job, because this is not the company or the culture that I signed up for. Respect my people. And I think that's where it's at. It starts with respect, and not respect of titles, but people and their actions. And that's how you build trust over time.
Well, Damar, I love that, but I want to challenge that a little bit, because I think culture is within everybody in the organization. A company should not have a black eye when the CEO passes away. It should be able to thrive and continue thriving beyond that. And I think that's the cultural dissemination. I don't know. I'd be curious to learn, Arik, Don, and Damar, your thoughts on this. But if we're building a culture of respect, if we're building a culture where people are respecting, messages that are coming from different people within the organization, Damar, I hear what you're saying. Obviously, there's going to be, whether we like it or not, we're conditioned to respect people and authority. So we might have a greater level of affinity for a message from a CEO versus from somebody else in the organization. But I would care to argue that it should be relatively equal. Like, if I hear a message from a colleague of mine, whether it be, it doesn't matter what your title is, I should treat it ideally with the utmost respect. But I don't know. Arik, Don, Damar, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so let me push back at you a little bit on we're trained to respect authority. I don't think the Gen Zs would quite believe in that.
I agree. Yeah.
So the part of culture and part of building a culture of allowing mistakes is connecting people to purpose. Right. Because especially in the Gen Z, and I guess in the Gen Y world, they want to connect what they do to a higher purpose. Compared to the baby boomers, you keep your nose clean, you work one place 40 or 50 years, then you get a gold watch, right? So the dynamic of what inspires people and what motivates people and what creates employee engagement, it depends on person's career goals, life situation, family, right? Because we're all the same people in work and out of work. And I think there's a big difference between a leader who is loved and admired versus a loyal person who is indispensable. So, there was great grief and mourning when Sam Walton passed away, because he was a great leader. And there were other great leaders that, jumped on board and took Walmart to even higher heights. But to have a leader that is admired, loved, and followed, as opposed to, we've all had employees that would grudgingly do what they were asked to do, but their heart really wasn't in it. Like the little joke of the boy that said, I may be sitting down on the outside, but I'm standing up on the inside.
Yeah.
I couldn't have said it any better. Thanks, Don.
Yeah, to expand a bit about what Don said, especially in the technology organization, and regardless of Gen Z or whatever gen, developers are a very unique creature, or not unique creature. They want to code, right? They want to create code, and it doesn't matter if the code produces A or produces B, right? At the end of the day, code does some magic, right, Garrett? Code does some magic, and things happen. And one of the things that I learned through the startup and all the insurtech and fintech, that if you explain to them the broader picture of what you're doing, the ecosystem, how things you do affect. For instance, in insurance, there's a ton of compliance. You can't move right or left without hitting compliance rules or things. And some of them don't make sense. Like it's an old industry. Some of them are like, seriously, this rule may be good for 50 years ago. Why do I need to so pop up with the obvious thing or things like that? Which doesn't make sense and frustrate them, because one thing developers don't like to do is redundant work, right? They want to do new work and cool and go and move forward and not do redundant work, which seems very, very not useful. So once you explain to them the ecosystem, what they're doing, what's the producing for the company as well, right? If you're doing this feature, this takes the company light years forward. We had it now in Dallas. We launched our agent portal. Up until now, it was a very naive form that someone filled, and then we had people, we threw bodies at the problem to copy paste to another system. And engineers in my team knew that when we will launch this is going to be like going from a 1880 Ford, when you have to start it with a lever, to a Porsche, and even starting to maybe fly in the air. So if you explain to them the motivation, this is another way of creating loyalty, of having them own their own mistakes, because they know if they mess up here, yeah, it can happen, but you're shutting down our system. Now we can't write policies, no writing policies, no premium, no money, no investment, and again, it's they need to understand the entire broad alignment of everything has consequences. Again, it's not to frighten anybody, say you're not allowing mistakes, just to understand what's the urgency. Another thing that I'm usually telling, and it's kind of again, creating loyalty and enthusiasm, is we're not in the medicine business. I want you to work 9 to 5 again. And we have different time zones, so it's kind of nice. It's not 9 to 5, it's 7 to 8 p.m. overall, the spread. But still, I want you to work your hours. I want you to produce. And I want you to know that unless something critical, I expect you to work and still have and I know people are now very afraid of saying life-work balance, because a lot of us working from home. So it's, how do you define a work-life balance when you're walking to the living room in 2 seconds? But still, like, take time off and do your stuff. And this also creates loyalty. If an employee has an issue, I had an employee with his wife was hospitalized, and they're young. They're like, just something happened. And he called me and apologized that he can't work the next 2 days. And we had a critical release. And I told him, listen, I don't care about the release. Take care of your family, because and I told him also very bluntly, if I get you to work now from the hospital, it doesn't benefit me. You're worried. You're not going to do your best work. That means we're not going to deliver the best product. So it's a lose-lose for everybody. Take your time, be with your family, come back, no rush. And this employee came back with a vengeance. And this is not the first time it happened. So again, one way to build loyalty is, if people have issues, if people have problems, let them handle them, especially family. Like, this is the most important part. Right. And if someone ill or something like that, and this builds tons of loyalty. He's still 2 weeks later and he's still on the ramp. And I told him to slow down. Actually, I told him, slow down, take it easy. No, I have to compensate for that. I didn't ask you to do that, but he wants to. And I think that's created a lot of loyalty and engagement and with employees.
I like that. That's a good story, Arik. Let's change gears for a little bit, guys. I'd love to learn your thoughts. This is a question I love to ask all of our panelists. What is a popular belief about leadership that you disagree with? So when I ask this question, I mean, not something that everybody, is written in all the books, but something that's different, something that's unique, something that you believe is critical to leadership, but maybe not everybody holds this view. What is that for you? Who wants to kick off?
I don't mind kicking off. I think one of the common mistakes, not common misperceptions, I think, is that leaders have all the solutions. It's like we have a manual back there in my library that says that the magic book that you show a problem and automatically it's like Harry Potter. The solution will be written there. I think leaders, especially as the top one don't have solutions for half the problems. We just listen to other people providing solutions and try to kind of unify it and get the best one. A lot of time we have our smarts, right? Our experience, and this is important, but we don't have solution. We are more an advisory role than solving problem roles. And by advising and things like that, we actually coming to a solution with a team. But I don't have prescription solutions for everything, right? And a lot of misconception is when employees come, and it's same in the army, by the way, it's same in civilian life. We go into our managers and hope for a solution. I have a problem. Okay, don't show me the problem. Come with suggestions and we'll work it out. I'll guide you to the solution. But I don't have a prescribed solution for X and Y. I'm not a doctor. And I think that's a very big misconception, especially in the leadership level, when we look at CEOs and others, especially big companies, and we expect them to, to answer every question possible.
I think that's a funny one and a very true one, Arik, because it's I think wherever we're at in our organizational hierarchy, if we've got direct reports, we are like, oh yeah, I totally agree with that. But then when we go to our respective boss, we're like, I can't believe he or she didn't know the answer to that question. What the heck's wrong with them? They were supposed to help me with that thing. And it's easy to have double standards when you're in the middle. If you're, if you're a vice president, wherever you're at within your organizational hierarchy, I think what you're saying, Arik, makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I'm always surprised, and I guess I shouldn't be surprised at how common negative leadership is, right? Because we all have two leadership styles, one when we're okay, and then the other when we're under duress. So under negative, I would put name calling. I can't believe you didn't know that. Berating employees in public, criticizing employees in public, yelling at employees, right? And we all have our moments, right? We all have things to deal with. But there's I remember having a discussion with one leadership, one really, really strong leader, that I said, negativity and guilt is not a good way to motivate people. And this leader said, oh, yes, they are. So they actually believe that in their core. So you can always get short-term results by yelling at people, but not in the long term. That's why 88% of employees would go find another job as soon as a new job appeared. So I think we have a massive problem in culture in the workplace in America today. And that's just one of the telltale symptoms.
I like that. I think another thing, like to add to that, I think a lot of leaders, when a scenario happens, they get really caught up in the sunk cost fallacy, where they look at something that's already happened, it's already passed, it's done. Can't change anything about it. It's over. It's done. But they're pissed about the fact that it happened. And they're yelling about this thing as if maybe by yelling at this employee or this person on your team, somehow it might change the result of something that you cannot change. It's already been done. It's already happened. And all you're doing is making the situation worse.
You mean you don't have a time machine back behind that door?
That's exactly right. Yes. No, that's exactly.
I think to that point, dog owners will understand me. If your dog did something and 2 minutes later you see it and you start yelling at the dog, he looks at you and they're like, what the heck are you talking about? They don't know what you're talking, unless you caught them in the act. For them, you're just yelling at them.
Yeah.
And it's not exactly, I want to compare dogs to humans, but it's kind of the same result. They don't understand what you want from them and they're not going to fix it because it's done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if I were going to add something, I think the common misconception is that leadership is solely about achieving results in the bottom line, because it's so much more than that, right? And how you inspire trust and build a legacy is through relationships and what you leave, not what you take to the bank. Most people don't remember their bank accounts on their deathbed, how much money they have, but they do remember a memory or a story, time in which someone impacted their life. And maybe that's the more empathetic approach to leadership, but just thinking that it's purely about the bottom line all the time, always, I think is a fallacy that shouldn't exist.
I like that, Damar, but I do want to ask a follow-up question on that. What, in your perspective, is the best way to push somebody? I think what we're assuming is that everyone's putting in their full effort all the time. They know exactly what the priority order is, and they know what to do. They know how to prioritize. Everything is set and good to go. But oftentimes that's not the case. It's not because they don't care. Oftentimes they do care. they just maybe didn't know the priority order, or didn't know how to organize exactly what the best use of their time was. How do you go about effectively pushing back on someone if you're observing that their performance isn't meeting your expectations without crushing spirits?
Well, you have to engage, right? I mean, I can't wait till your mid-year or to your annual evaluation to hold you accountable for something you did in January, and now that it's December, right? It's so leaders have to have more frequency of communication and one-on-ones. I have one-on-ones with my team and my supervisor, but I go to Dennis's desk. He's our chief operating officer every single day, multiple times. We talk all the time. So when we get to our one-on-one, I look at him, it's like, hey, is this even needed? Because we're communicating all the time. Policy things, staffing things, visionary things, event planning, all of that, because of the engagement that's there is a lesson for me. And with my team, it's about knowing what they're working on, understanding what their strengths and understanding what their motivations are. And if you don't know what motivates your team member to be successful, I think I would start there, is taking an interest in your employee and try to figure out what their priorities are. And you know what? Sometimes it's going to be work. Sometimes it's going to be family. And I love that story about, hey, you need to be focusing on your family. The first thing, if anyone on my team reaches out to me about an issue, hey, I need to work home because I have X, Y, and Z, I really don't need the explanation as to the why.
Yeah.
I'm trusting that they're going to do the best thing for the organization, but they're going to take care of their family. And I always tell them family first, family first. I need your attention here when you're here, but if you're worried about your family, go home. Take care of the situation, take care of whatever that is, because I need you to be fully invested in getting the work for the organization done when you're here. So go take care of that thing that's preventing you from being all in, so that when it's resolved, you can come back to us. And so exempling that, being an example, a role model, so to speak, but it starts with engagement.
Yeah, I always say if you're coming to a mid-year review and you're being surprised by something, or you're surprising your employee, you didn't do your job right. I'm also a very big believer in one-on-ones. And yeah, some of the one-on-ones, I'm literally talking about the weather with the employee, but he'll get his 15 minutes with me. And if it's sitting over coffee when I walked in the office, or just staring at my background, I don't care. I'll count the 15 minutes and I'll let them go. But usually something will come up, right? People tend to fill the void. And so yeah, one-on-ones are super important. Let them, getting feedback. You need to understand what caused if someone misperformed or something happened. Usually don't tackle the problem. Thing happened. We all know what happened, right? It's not a secret. I'm usually trying to understand what the underlying reason for it, right? What caused it? Was it system fault? Was it misconception? Was it a human mistake? And I hope it's not, again, we're not going to the trust thing. We've talked about it enough. But then with the employee, okay, how do we prevent it? And this is how I usually try to work it out, because going and tackling forward, like, we made a mistake. That's kind of, okay, now he's in defense mode. Now he's gone in defensive. Now he needs to make excuses why he or she messed up and things like that. That's exactly anti-encouragement of allowing mistakes to happen, because if every mistake I need to start defend myself. And I know firing is the most, like, terminating is the worst thing, but you don't want to be terminated from a job every day. Like, it's not fun. You want stability. We all like stability. Most humans like stability, and, having a steady paycheck and having our we know what we're going to do in the next month or so, give or take. So this is where I think you also build trust, because now he knows he can make mistakes. And again, we'll try to understand why these mistakes happen. The problematic part becomes if I made the same mistake 5 times, and we still did the understanding kind of post-mortem, and I'm still making the same mistake over and over and over, I think that goes to the trust. Now we cross to the trust issue. Can I trust you to actually do something without repeating the same mistake? Because mistakes should happen once or twice, not more than that. Usually, again, in very general terms.
I like it. Well, Damar, Don, Arik, this has been fantastic. Really great conversation, really great dialogue on this topic. I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate you taking the time to share your perspective with our audience. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. By the way, for those of you who are watching, if you want to meet these three incredible gentlemen at our executive symposium, come. I'll input in the comment section how to RSVP, and I'd love to see you there. If you got any questions, post in the comment section or send me a direct message.